If you can live more in balance with your photography, your life will be better, your photography will be better. Just in general, stuff will be more in sync. So the other point, you don't have to shoot everything. So in this mindset shift, we have to realize that we don't need to be clicking the shutter at everything. I used to do this all the time, younger, traveling, just thinking I had to look through a viewfinder, and back then a film camera, all that stuff. You had to be just looking for shots. And if the camera wasn't up to my eye, I felt like I wasn't accomplishing everything. And that's because not every trip needs to be a portfolio builder. We look at it and we say, oh, well, we've got to make those images. We got to make those images, so we got to shoot. What I would say there is, I set an intention for a trip, right? Am I doing this to just relax? Am I doing this just to explore? Or am I doing this to create images, right? And for me, tends to be where I'm at now is I try to carve it up where I balance all three. I intentionally balance all three. But we do have to make a decision when we're talking about this stuff. And the decision I tend to make is, am I a photographer on this trip, or is this a photography trip? Now, these two things are way different, because at the end of the day, you can do both, but you can't do both at the same time. So on certain days I'm traveling, there's certain times where today I am on a photo mission, a photography mission. And then there's other days where I'm just letting photography happen, right? And usually my great shots come out when I'm on the mission. I'm on mission. Spontaneous shots come every once in a while because there is an element of photography that is luck. But for me, that's why you see me a lot of times spending so much time with planning and really digging in and figuring out the plan or the intention with my photography. I found, again, it just keeps me a little bit more in balance in life. When you're traveling with others, and this is where this presentation is going to be a little slanted. I travel with other people. I mostly travel with my family, my friends, and then nieces, nephews, and then you might have grandchildren, children, all that stuff. You're traveling with people, or you're traveling with other friends. That the key with that is when you're traveling with other people, it's very important to be present in that travel first and become a photographer second. This is another thing I had to learn to kind of like flip, because you think, well, I got to be the documentarian. I got to be the photographer. What I realized is I need to take pictures, but I don't need to live for just taking pictures, right? That I have to be present in those moments. And then to my next point, again, with this mindset shift that we're having, is look before you lift the camera, right? So a lot of times my camera is with me, but I am not engaged with it. My photography became a lot, especially my travel photography, became a lot better when I look at a scene, ingest that scene, and then see, well, when do I actually need to take a shot? I'm not just going up and like just snapping and snapping and snapping until you find it. Now, there was a time that I felt like I had to do that, but I found that when I just looked at the scene, took it in, because the other thing is a lot of these places that we're going, even my other family members, friends, colleagues that are with me, we're all taking in the scene. I love to travel to the national parks. When you're out there, everybody that I know, some people, they like to talk and chat, but most people are just looking at the awe and the wonder of what's in front of you, especially if you're going out at the amazing times, which we tend to do. That's one of the byproducts that I know my family loves about me being a photographer, is that I get to take them out at the magic times. Now, usually I'll admit, my family, that's sunset or right after sunset. They've realized over time that actually the best time is after sunset. Reality is most tourists don't know that. Most people don't know that the best time, the best light, best environment, it's right after sunset. So we've experienced that. The mornings tend to be my time. Why do the mornings tend to be my time? Because nobody I'm going with for traveling ever want to get up in the morning. So mornings tend to be the time when I go, I'm going to do that special thing, that planning thing, that I'm going to make a shot out of this. And then another thing we want to do is we want to chase the feeling, not just the photo, right? So we're trying to capture in our frame the feeling or the emotion of what's going on. And we have to understand, too, that people aren't there to realize what you're realizing or what you're observing. So whatever goes into your frame or whatever doesn't go into your frame, which is sometimes just as important, you have to have that intention. How am I going to communicate the beauty that's in front of me, or the wonder, or the amazement, or the architecture, or the culture, the people? Like, how am I going to communicate that in my frame? And that goes to practicing visual journaling over perfect shots. That I want to capture what's going on here rather than just perfecting the shot, right? That I don't need to spend hours getting the perfect shot, especially if I'm with other people. I need to capture what I'm seeing, that amazing thing. And you know what? If I had to shoot it at 400 ISO or 800 ISO, rather than stopping everybody, taking out my tripod, getting everything set up, that's much better. We have an unspoken, it's funny, we have an unspoken kind of language in my family. They know when the camera bag comes down, the tripod gets brought out, it's because I see something that I know is worth us pausing for 5 or 10 minutes. But I don't abuse that. And I find a lot of photographers that I travel with, they'll abuse that. And they'll kind of abuse it and take an hour getting a shot that, you know, again, we could have just worked it. I could have said, oh, it's good, but I don't need to like spend all that time getting everything set up. Because we need to let go of that fear of missing out, right? When we're traveling, we feel like if we're not shooting, we might miss something. It's travel, it's not work. This is travel photography. Now, I mean, some people do this for work, and I get that if you're doing it for work, but most of us here are probably doing this for enjoyment, for fun, for hobby. And, you know, just let it go and just kind of like give it over to the process.